Hello and welcome to Trading Day. We are on every night for the next 10 nights, giving you all the news, the analysis and the best opinion behind the scenes as to all the trades from the clubs. Now, free agency opened last Friday, but at 9 a.m. this morning, the bell rang and the trade period began. It obviously finishes next Wednesday as well. Let's get straight into it. David King, Joey Montagna and Ralphie from the Herald Sun, welcome to you. Bring us up to date because we just had a trade about 2 minutes ago.
That's right, a day of haggling, posturing, positioning and that official trade. We'll get to that in a second. So Hawthorn's John Segler is exploring a move to a club like the Western Bulldogs there. North Melbourne and Richmond are miles apart on Callum Coleman-Jones. North offering pick 38, Richmond demanding pick 20. Now Geelong is asking for pick 8 for Jordan Clark. Fremantle offering pick 27. Both clubs again poles apart. And that trade. Now it is a significant pick swap. Collingwood's pick swap with Gold Coast. It'll pave the way for Nick Dacos, their father-son, to get in the door, as well as picks for Patrick Lipinski and Nathan Kruger to get to the Holden Centre. So the nub of it is Collingwood secures pick 22, 46, 58, 79 and a future fourth rounder for a future second, third and fourth rounder. Great news, but again, their draft hand next year is decimated, but they get the stars in the door and a couple of role players as well in Lipinski and Kruger.
So before we talk about Adam Cerra, this deal essentially gives Collingwood a great draft hand this year, which they need, Kingy and Joey, but next year the Gold Coast Suns have an unbelievable draft hand and almost nothing this year aside from pick 3 and pick 19, which they might lose for Darcy McPherson.
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. They're giving away... They're still in a rebuild mode, Collingwood. So giving away a future second and third round next year, even going ahead next year, that could be a pick in the early 20s, you would suspect, if they're a bottom 4 team again. This year, they're obviously going to use a lot of those picks to get Nick Dacos and Lipinski and Kruger. Where do their other 2 draft picks come from? Are they just going to take the kids right at the tail end of the draft? Yeah, so essentially, they're walking out with one superstar, we believe, youngster, in Nick Dacos, a couple of fringe players at other clubs, and then nothing else, essentially, that's going to be of any quality in this draft.
Yeah, they might have to delist some players out there, like Braden Sy, and then potentially they might have to bring them back as one of their 3 mandatory picks.
We've talked about this, though. I mean, the trading of their first-round selection this year, in hindsight, will be reviewed as a poor decision. I've got no doubt about that, because last year they effectively got 2 players for that pick. But if you look at the way it's fallen this year, with the Kangaroos likely just to bid on Horn, not to bid on Dacos and just select Horn, they would have got 2 guns. Effectively, you know, pick 2 in the draft and Dacos. Yeah. So, you know, they've swapped that pick to GWS and it's going to bite them for a number of years. And all they're doing now, and they had to get creative, so they're in this position now, is delaying the pain. At some point, this will cost them a star player to get back in the draft.
Nick Dacos didn't want to be the saviour at this football club. He's going to have to be the saviour of this draft. Because as you say, Joey, he's about all they have coming in. He's the bloke that's going to have to dominate for round 1 to justify, you know, an extraordinary situation here.
So Adam Cerra is the big one. That's the big fish in this trade period, let's be honest, Ralphie. So pick 6, you told us on grand final day, that's done. Pick 6 will change hands. But how are they going to get this deal done, the Dockers and the Carlton Football Club?
Well, Carlton say we want more than pick 6. We want a future second and potentially, you know, Fremantle might be able to give back a future third to try and, you know, sweeten the deal back their way. Why is it more than pick 6? Well, pick 6 will become pick 8 with those 2 father-sons. And it's a draft with kids who have played, say, 6 or 8 games in 2 years of football. It's a total crapshoot. And so if it was that Adam Cerra was in the open draft, well, Fremantle are saying he'd probably be about pick 4 or pick 5. So we want more than pick 6. He's not a perfect player. He's not a megastar. How highly do you rate this guy? Because I think he's still what Carlton needs.
Oh, I rate him really high. I mean, he's still only 21 years of age and he's already finished 3rd in the best and fairest and 5th in the best and fairest in his last 2 years. I think he's got all Australian calibre written all over him. I mean, his skill is as good, and I went and spoke about it during the year. His inside 50 kick rating was almost one of the best in the competition. You look at his numbers there on the screen, that's for all midfielders across the competition. But when you look at his season compared to any other midfielder under the age of 22, only Sam Walsh and his teammate Andrew Brayshaw had a better season. So I think he's absolutely worth more than just a pick 6 alone. So
Fremantle want pick 6 and maybe a future second rounder. Is that a fair request, do you think, Kingy?
Well, it is a fair request, but unfortunately it's a buyer's market.
Yep.
And he's chosen Carlton, and Carlton's saying, well, that's what we're prepared to offer. What else do you want to do? How else do you want to get this deal done? I'm sure they'll start here and here and work their way back to the middle somehow, Ralphie. But if Carlton stay strong and dig their heels in, what other options are available?
Well, they could go to the pre-season draft. No one wants to do anything like that. Look, I think they'll get somewhere in between. Say it's pick 6 and a future second with a third back. you look at the net gain in that midfield. Because right now they've got Sam Walsh and they've got Patrick Cripps. Who's their third best midfielder?
Yeah, but
is it Paddy Dow?
No one else is coming for Cerra.
Yeah.
And what they're offering is far less than what Carlton are giving anyway.
Yep. So
there's only one buyer.
So even if it's 6 and steak knives, you get Hewitt in, and you also get in Adam Cerra for effectively 6 and a second or third rounder next year. I think that's a massive gain.
I think it's got to be 6 and a minimum a second round, because if you look at, he's only 21. So when we talk about the other big trades that have happened in recent years, Tim Kelly, Dylan Shield, even Prestia, they were all 24, 25 years of age. At 21, the only comparison really, if you have a good look, was Adam Treloar when he left the Giants to Collingwood, and he went for pick 7 and a future first rounder, and they got back 28.
Because there was more than one team at the auction. They got one bidder at the auction.
So you're just saying 6, suck it up
6,
until 10
third
seconds
rounder.
before midnight.
That's it. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
I'd be strong if I was Carlton. They've got the whip hand here.
Yeah.
So why do they need to give up an extra second rounder? We're just talking about Collingwood saying, oh, gee, they've given up a lot and delaying some pain. If I'm Carlton, I'm saying, that's it, maybe a third rounder. We're paying overs. No one else is coming to the party. Good luck.
Michael Voss's first line in the sand call.
Yeah.
I do think Carlton and Freo are slightly closer than what Geelong and Freo are, Ralphie, regarding Jordan Clark.
So as you reported today, Fremantle's offer was pick 27 for Jordan Clark, a former pick 15 of 3 years ago. Now, my understanding is Geelong said, no, we want pick 8. We want that first pick. Now, I think that was basically laughed out of court. I think Stephen Wells is now asking for a pick between those two. There is common ground there. We are 10 days out, so I think there's no doubt that will get done. So it's hard to assess how good he is. 18 games in his first year, kicks it quite well, wasn't rated by Matthew Scarlett. Do you guys rate this bloke? And it doesn't really matter where he was picked 3 years ago if he can't get into the Geelong team.
Well, it's impossible to have a great handle on him, really, because he hasn't been exposed to senior AFL football for a sustained period. So he's got some shortcomings. We know that. Otherwise, underneath the umbrella of the protection of Selwood and Dangerfield and Duncan and all these guys, you would think he would have been able to slip in there somewhere and play a block of 15 to 20 games in a row. That hasn't happened. So I wouldn't be giving the world for him because he's just unknown. He looks good. He's got all the attributes. But I've seen 100 players come through the system that can run well, move well, kick well, and on their day can hurt you, but haven't. So I wouldn't be giving up too much. I think somewhere, you were saying somewhere between pick 15 and 20 is about right. That pick will probably slide down.
Even for a contracted player?
I think
that
so.
changes things, doesn't it? You talk about leverage.
But
Geelong hasn't leverage here.
You're not playing him.
Like but that doesn't matter contractually. They have every right to say, no, he's contracted. Yeah. We won't trade him unless we get a good deal.
They can keep him. But they keep him and not play him. What's the point of that?
And then trade him next year. But they still think like they've got a midfield that can have him as part of it. I think Geelong's in a really good position.
They don't think that at all.
No, but
they haven't played him at all.
Otherwise, they'd trade him for pick 27. If they thought he had no future at the club, they'd take pick 27.
No, they think he's worth more than that, and I don't disagree. I think somewhere between 15 and 20 is about right.
If I was Justin Longmuir, I'd be calling up Matthew Scarlett. People said, oh, Matthew Scarlett had a set against this bloke. Well, I think Matthew Scarlett values one-on-one defence, he values physicality, and he values defensive run. And so it's almost been seen as he couldn't get a game because Matthew Scarlett didn't like him. Well, why didn't he like him? And so if it is that he had, genuine concerns he doesn't think can be fixed, well, maybe maybe it's not we just need to get this bloke in at any cost.
Where do you see him, Joey?
Well, I don't think he's a top 20 pick, certainly. I mean, if we're talking about some other players, and we'll get to Jordan Dawson and some other names in a minute, I can't see he's a top 20 pick, considering he was picked 15 3 years ago. He's played 30 games in 3 years, essentially as a fringe player. So I think around that 27, maybe it's somewhere a bit less than 27. They'll come to an agreement, you would think. Yeah. But he's certainly not worth it inside top 20.
Can we talk about Hawthorn, Ralphie? You wrote a really good story in the Herald Sun today. You spoke to Richie Vandenberg. Sam Mitchell's come in, and he's gone bang, hasn't he? Because there's all these veterans now at Hawthorn, not even veterans. There's all these players that are more available than what we think they would have otherwise been had Alistair Clarkson been the coach at the same time. Yeah,
no doubt. Yeah, Richie Vandenberg, who's the football director, and of course he sits on the list management group as well. His message was clear. We need a better draft hand. So right now they have picks 1, 21 and 24. So Tom Mitchell wants to stay. You've reported during the year that, potentially he might have explored a move. I think now he wants to stay. Jack Gunston, he's open to staying, but I think, not at any cost. I've got no doubt their dream scenario is what Essendon was able to do last year, 8, 9, 10. What Port Adelaide was able to do with, Dersma and Butters and Rosie, 3 picks within 16. The only way to do that is by trading out your experienced players. Now, John Segler's one of those, 30 years of age, a huge back end of the season. The Hawks want to play McAvoy and Reeves. The Dogs are desperate for a ruckman to bridge the gap between Steph Martin and Tim English, but you get pick 40 for him. To get the stars in, or the really high picks, you've got to make really tough decisions. And that's Mitchell, O'Meara, Chad Wingard. Now, as Vandenberg said, we have had tough discussions with those players. Who are you guys trading out if you want to get those elite picks in?
Well, my first port of call would be, is this really what Sam Mitchell wants to do? Is this really a decision you want to be rusted onto? Because you can lose so much of your environment if you ostracise all of those elder citizens who have been so good for this football club for a long period of time through the peak days. You know, they've been really successful. They're great leaders. So just be careful, you know, what you wish for here. I just wonder if Alistair Clarkson was still there and guiding Sam through this, whether this would be the way forward. I don't have the answer on that. But I just don't know if it's healthy to say everyone's up for grabs here. Come and pick apart our carcass if you like. I think that's a dangerous play. Whether they go or they stay, I think they're dangerous words.
So you don't want to have a happy group that's a mediocre group. You know,
not going to be mediocre. Those players are too proud to be mediocre. OK, they may not have been on the park through injury, and you can make your own assessment from there, but I just think it's a dangerous starting point for me.
Yeah, I get where King is coming from. I probably agree. I think if you're Sam Mitchell, you want to keep that fabric and that integrity. So maybe the guys like Brewston, Gunston and Shields and McAvoy, your premiership stars that are the fabric, that have that success behind them, you keep. But I'm OK if they're open to trading one of O'Meara, Mitchell, Wingard, who've only been at the club for anywhere. And, well, Segler we've spoken about, you're not getting a lot for him. I'm OK to maybe trading one of those three that have come to the club in the last 3 to 5 years, haven't been a part of that success, and get another pick inside the top 20.
So the Tom Mitchell situation, happy to stay. Port Adelaide are saying right now we're not really interested in him, but as you've reported, Sam Powell-Pepper might be going to West Coast. Certainly Peter Laddams with a cap space. Now, if it is that two of those players move on, say Hawthorn are prepared to give up $250,000 of a $750,000 a year salary, you're having a tough conversation with him. He's moving on to a club that's in the premiership window, which Hawthorn is not. Totally understand what you're saying, but maybe that win-win allows Sam Mitchell and Tom Mitchell to be happy, and he gets his high pick.
Exactly what Joey just said. I'm not as pent up about the Wingard Mitchell sort of setup. It's more the Gunston, Bruce, the types that have developed a culture at that football club that's demanded excellence on and off the field. I just think you've got to be very careful, because if you can easily purge some of these players and get not much back for them. Like, to do that for a pick 40. So Jack Gunston, what are you going to get for Jack Gunston in the open market?
Not much.
It's a really difficult one because he's been injured all year.
What pick?
Best and fairest last time he played, probably pick 30, maybe?
Is it worth pick 30 to take that risk as a first-year coach coming in to take over the group?
Probably not. But if Jack Gunston says, I'm open to a 2 or 3 year deal,
that's different.
Conversation.
That's a different conversation.
So if Hawthorn has 3 picks inside 25 at the moment, Joey, and 5 picks inside 30 is their absolute aim, philosophically, that is a difference from what Alistair Clarkson did for a long period of time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is, And I think they need to continue to rebuild. I mean, I still think their list is healthier than I think a lot of people give them credit for. I still think they've got the best back 6 or 7, one of the most exciting in the competition going forward. When you add Will Dane, Granger, Barras with Giath and all the other guys that we've spoken about, Sicily back to full health. So they've still got a bit of work to do, particularly in the front half, because Itzke and Mitchell Lewis have come along. I think if they can get 4 or 5 picks inside 30, the way they've drafted in the past, they get another strong hand. I can see them spiking pretty quick in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and we saw Adelaide get to a grand final with a lot of rookies and a lot of late picks and a very few top 20 picks. That's absolutely what Hawthorn would have to do, but we've seen it happen in the last 10 years.
And don't be scared to lose a star or two. If they do lose a Mitchell, well, we saw Warple without Mitchell when he was injured with his broken leg. Warple had a best and fairest calibre year. All of a sudden, he hasn't quite been the same since the midfield group of O'Meara and Shields and Mitchell are back in there. So you can replace those players and still get a really strong hand in the draft.
Every year we talk about a club who's going to have a big impact on other clubs, what they do. Richmond is absolutely that club this trade period, Ralphie. They've got 6 picks inside 47. That will become 7 when and if Callum Coleman-Jones goes. They're trying to move up the draft order, aren't they? They would take 4 picks inside 20 rather than 7 inside 47. What's the latest with them, and how's Callum Coleman-Jones going to get to North Melbourne?
So they want the Western Bulldogs pick 17. Now, they've got those multiple picks there, and they believe that, of course, Western Bulldogs only need points, really, for Sam Darcy, so they might be able to give them a better hand so they can get 3 picks already within 17. And then they want 20 for Callum Coleman-Jones, who, of course, is a former pick 20 with 4 years investment in him. They think he was ready to blossom after a pretty solid year. Now, North Melbourne saying, we just don't think he's worth that, and we don't think ruckmen are worth pick 28. We're prepared to give 38 up. Now, some of the ruckmen who have moved hands in the last few years, one of them, Toby Nankervis, pick 46. Jared Witts, pick 44. They just don't rate ruckmen in the top 20. Now, there is the potential for him to go through to the pre-season draft. North are saying we want to negotiate in good faith. That would absolutely be a plan B. How highly do you rate? I know you're a big fan of Callum Coleman-Jones.
Yeah, I am. I'm a huge fan, and I think he's probably worth pick 20. But again, it's a buyer's market. They can walk him through the pre-season draft. The player wants to play AFL footy. He's been at Richmond for 4 years. He just hasn't been able to nail down that first ruck position. He wants ruck exposure, not forward exposure. And I think it'll get done. I think it'll get done for that pick 38 you speak of. Sure, Richmond are not happy, but that's the law of the jungle. They've won on the swing a couple of times, Richmond, so I think they've got to give one up here.
What's his salary at North Melbourne if he goes there?
I think it's about $450,000.
So it's 450 times 4. Is that not worth pick 20, or is that irrelevant?
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what the draft pick is. And I agree with Kingy. The Kangaroos have got the upper hand in this situation because they'll deal in good faith. If Richmond don't come to the party, a bit like what happened with Jack Martin with the Gold Coast Suns, you say, well, worst case scenario, we walk him through
Jackson Hately at Adelaide
and get him for nothing. So Richmond, unfortunately, will have to accept probably under what he's worth, Kingy, but that's all part of it when you've got the upper hand as unsigned.
Might be a little switch with picks. Could be the sweetener.
Yep.
Pick 26 down to pick 20, something like that.
And if they get Robbie Tarrant 38 and 39 for Marbia Chol and Callum Coleman-Jones, it's about right.
Yeah, they're going right, Richmond. They've got plenty more activity this trade period as well. You speak of North Melbourne. Darcy McPherson is a Gold Coast player. He's got 1 year left on a contract at the Suns. But, North Melbourne are interested. They've offered him a 2-year deal on not a lot of money. Is he going to end up at the Roos or is he going to stay at the Suns?
Well, I think there's real conjecture about that. It's very much up in the air. This is a salary cap dump, plain and simple. And we've only seen a handful of them across the years. And, Kingy, you've been really solid about these kind of things. You said when clubs have got cap space, it's a commodity. So the Suns would send pick 19 and Darcy McPherson to North. They would get a future second rounder. They would pay that $400,000. Gold Coast would have that to pay for the likes of Ben King and Jack Lukosius and Isaac Rankin in coming months. Tom, you've suggested that McPherson's not that keen to actually go.
He wants to stay at the Gold Coast Suns, but I'm sure with a longer-term offer or more money that they'd be able to talk him around.
So North Melbourne were keen. 2 years, we take the cap hit, and that's fine. We get pick 19. Now his management are keen for a 3-year deal, and they're saying, no, 2 years it is. Don't get greedy about that. You know, we're very keen to offer you 2 years. If you stay on the Gold Coast for 1 more year, you might get your $400,000, but your career might be over. At only 23, come to a club that wants you, come to a club that will nurture you. I think it's a smart call for Darcy to say, move on from the sun and sand, play at a club that's got a legitimate list spot for him, and you might only get, say, $450,000 or $500,000 over those 2 years, but you set your career up again.
Can I just ask one question on Lewis Young, Joey? He's nominated Carlton today as his preferred home. Does that make sense to you from a Blues perspective?
Yeah, I think it's OK for Carlton because he might not be in their best 22 if everyone's fit and healthy, but as we know, you never really have your best 22 out on the park, if at all, Kingy. So you really need 30 to 32 players in your squad if you are going to be a really strong football club. I think it's a good bit of depth for Carlton. He might break himself into being in their best defence or as a backup ruck, but if you can get him, it's not going to cost them a lot. I think Carlton, you're adding to your depth.
It's a topic for another day, but the Suns paying these sorts of players $400,000 plus is a disgrace. It really is. They find themselves in these positions because of their own doing, their own salary cap and list organisation. So, this salary cap dump effectively is going to cost them a pretty high pick 19. Well done to the Kangaroos if they can buy themselves that pick effectively. But that's just not right. That's out of whack with the rest of the competition.
A topic for another day. We've got 10 days to get into that. It's really interesting. And disgrace is very strong, King.
Well, it is. Do you agree?
I think the first rounders, the Will Brodys of the world, that's the going rate for those blokes.
No problem with those guys.
He is not a first rounder. He's just a nice plodding player who's played, I think, 7 or 8 games in the last 2 years. They shouldn't have paid him that much.
After the break, we've got your new segment, Kingy. We've got Joey's Moneyball. But on November 24, it's the AFL National Draft where dreams are made and you can watch every last moment of it on Fox Footy.
We talk about the players, but we should mention the families who ride every bump of the roller coaster that is a young man's football journey. Right around Australia right now are right on the edge of their seats.
Well, they are.
With pick 2, the Adelaide Crows have selected Riley Philthorpe from West Adelaide.
You got mauled on the couch there a moment ago. The family went crazy.
With pick 17, Oliver Henry from the Geelong Falcons. With pick 9, the Essendon Football Club have selected Archie Perkins from the Sandringham Dragons.
A wonderful smile there and a tear in the eye.
Western Bulldogs have matched the Adelaide Crows' bid for Jamara Ugelhagen from the Oakley Chargers.
What a moment, what a special, beautiful moment.
Oh, it is. Look, those pictures are just absolutely brilliant, aren't they? The emotion, it gets to work very shortly, but what a moment for the family.
Why do we love sport?
The hair standing up on the back of your neck.
Where do we begin?
I've never been closer than I am right now.
It drives us, inspires us, brings us together. And when that whistle goes, the world disappears. We can never predict it, but we can always rely on it. For these thrills, that joy, this romance.
This fine batsman rises again. Oh, it's beautiful.
Those feels.
Take a bow!
For our team, for our passion, for the love of sport.
Welcome back to Trading Day. Lots of good sport coming up on Foxtel. I'm looking forward to the Ashes myself. I don't know about you guys, but it's going to be a great summer of cricket. You can catch it all on Fox Cricket. Now let's get back to Fox Footy. Kingy, we've been waiting all night for your first ever segment on Trading Day. Take it away.
So excited, Tommy, so excited. I just don't know, I'm just beside myself here. But I just want to talk about if you're in the window, you've got an obligation to go shopping during the trade period. Just have a look at what the two teams that made the grand final this year have done the last couple of years. They've gone and got Benny Brown, Langdon, Tomlinson, Colajasny and May the previous year, Lever the year before that, and spent a truckload. The Dogs, Treloar, Martin, Hannon, Bruce, Keith, Giray. Yep. So you've got to go shopping. You've got to take the risk while you're in the window. So I'm having a look at what's missing at these clubs. Why aren't they the premiers? What do they know about their list right now? Join the conversation, boys. I think you know when you're Brisbane, you know when you're the Dogs, you know when you're Geelong, you know where you're short. I think you've got to operate now. The Dogs need a ruckman. Go and get one. Fix the problem now. I've seen Geelong leak along for 4, 5, 6 years with the same known problem in September. If you're idle in October from a trade point of view, I think you're idle the following September when the finals are at their hottest. So I think they've got to get busy now. It's a quiet trade period. I know that not a lot of names are getting thrown around for some of these clubs, but if you're the Dogs, if you're just off, if you're even Sydney are very young and coming, get involved. Port Adelaide definitely.
How do you go shopping if you've got no money though, Joey? How creative can you get?
Well, I think with salary caps, you can manoeuvre money, can't you? If you're saying to players, hey, we're bringing in, hypothetically, the Bulldogs, a Todd Goldstein to win a flag. Hey, Bont, Treloar, can we shuffle some money? Can we sort of give it to you down the track? You know we're going to... I think you can make it work. But
Port have got to get going. Port have got salary cap room. It doesn't really matter whether Latham stays or goes. They got brutalised. Don't get beaten by what you know. In the inside midfield, there are players out there like Tom Mitchell. Just go and get them, and you've got a first rounder you can use to try and acquire them.
What about... I'll throw one at you. So what about Canelio? Everyone's talked about Canelio through the course of the year. Maybe you can get it subsidised by GWS somewhat. What if you had to pay him $500-600 a year just to get him to your football club? I know he needs a refresh. He needs a new season to start quickly if that's at GWS or elsewhere. What about Dylan Shield? Can you get those sort of guys to give Wines and Boak a chop out in that midfield while you're hot? While you need some bridging between that next batch of player coming through that are pretty young. They're not quite ready to take over the fortunes of this midfield. Is it worth taking the risk? Do you need to get adventurous? Don't be afraid to get it wrong.
Because he's at the bottom of the market right now, Canelio. Everyone thinks he's no good. Well, Tom McDonald was at the bottom of the market last year, and now everyone said, why didn't we have a crack at him? I know he had a quiet grand final, but maybe you just get really radical and you go for a Canelio and you get GWS to pay some of that wage.
If I'm the Dogs, and you think about next finals campaign, if you're going in with Tim English in the ruck, you know what's going to happen. So let's not be having this conversation next September.
It's almost like don't get beaten by what you know, but you know is your own club. Joey, your Moneyball.
Yes, let's play a game. We've got the Moneyball segment.
This
has got the stinger there, Kingy.
Yeah, I like it.
We want to play a game. So we talk about Moneyball. I want you to have a look at these two players. So we want to debunk the perceptions and actually look at performance and output of players. So on the right-hand side, you can see the numbers there compared to the player on the left. They're actually pretty good. They're two inside bulls, averaging same amount of clearances, inside 50s, tackling, and their kicking efficiency, all right? So a lot of possessions. Take a look at the one on the right. He just won a Brownlow medal. He just had one of the greatest seasons from a Brownlow perspective, polled in 16 games that we've ever seen. The player on the left, you talk about window shopping for guys that are in the market. This guy you will get for absolutely nothing in regards to money and no draft picks. And clubs like Richmond, Geelong and Port Adelaide are all in the need of an inside contested ball beast to either be in their best 22 or, if there's a couple of injuries, to be a player that can come in and you know exactly what you're going to get with him. So I just think for a team, as we said, like Richmond, even Geelong, they might move Selwood out to a wing like Melbourne did with Angus Brayshaw, send Isaac Smith to a half-back flank, and and you get that run and dash, you've got someone that can help Dangerfield. I just think a guy like Dunstan costs you nothing.
What
you don't have to give up.
What club would like him most?
Richmond, Geelong, Port Adelaide. Three clubs that need an inside bull that can help them in the premiership window. Doesn't have to be in their best team, but if he plays, you know what you're going to get. You could do a lot worse.
Is he going anywhere?
I think he could get to Essendon. Don't be surprised if he's at Windy Hill or Essendon next year.
It's one of my favourite segments, that.
Moneyball.
I love it, Joey.
Window shopping's pretty good as well.
No, the window shopping was good.
I've got to get a stinger on that. I've got some work to do.
Hey, we've all got work to do. There's a huge trade period coming up. Tomorrow night we're on from 5 p.m. Well done to Ralphie. You're working the Herald Sun tomorrow. We'll read that. And Joey and Kingy as well. We'll see if Luke Dunstan finds a home. Probably more later in the trade period than early. We'll see you tomorrow night on Trading Day on Fox Footy.